everyone! Welcome to what is basically my first tutorial for doing digital art. I got some requests for making this tutorial, so here goes. Now this is a more advanced tutorial. It's best if you already have a grasp of how clothing wrinkles and shading works before you start on this. So, in this pose, she's basically in a side view. To make it look more 3D, I've drawn in the arm and leg on the other side of her body. And imagine the camera as directly above her as she lies on the ground. It's a very relaxed pose. Her arms are drawn in and her legs are slightly bent. Now I'm adding in where the hair needs to go. It's basically a scribbly mess right now, but this is just a parameter I'm drawing so that I know where to put the hair. Same for the dress. You may want to sketch different things in different layers, like the clothes in one layer and the hair in a different one. Keeping it separate makes changing up the drawing easier and cleaner. Okay guys, here's a diagram of how to draw a basic dress. So a dress is pretty much two circles, a small one and then a big one. So the smallest circle is for the waist and the big circle is for the hem. Now imagine that a skirt is made up of big sort of triangular strips of fabric. Draw these fanning out from the waist until it looks like an umbrella, or maybe more likely a beach ball. These big triangles are the folds of the skirt. On the bottom edge of each of these triangles, draw a line curving in, back up to the waist. Okay. Now we'll draw hooks on the edges of these curves. This is where the dress folds in on itself. And we'll connect all of the big triangles with wavy lines that basically tend to fold up to the waist again. Now we can see that the big triangular points are the high parts of the dress, while the wavier lines are the lower parts. So I'm outlining in blue the low parts of the dress where most of the shadow will be. In between each of these big triangular curves is a low point, because the triangular curves, which are folds, are folding over those smaller pieces of fabric. There are some other folds coming off from the waist. Those are low points too, and those triangles we drew on the edges of big folds will be shaded in as well. So now I've darkened the skirt so that we can see what the high points are, which I'm coloring in with white. The very highest points are at the edges of the dress, where it folds up a whole lot. So that's basically how to draw a dress. Let's move on with the rest of this tutorial. If you don't know offhand how clothing works or how a dress would look in this position, look up some reference images. Using reference images for drawing is not cheating, and in my opinion, tracing to learn isn't cheating either. Just don't take credit for someone else's work. Now that I've shaded the sketch, I'll start on the secondary sketch. This one is a lot more detailed, but not as detailed as the final lines will be. This second sketch is where you make your final decisions for the drawing, and you can change things up in this. Even though the hair is a little wild, it follows a basic wave pattern. It all curves basically the same way, so keep the hair following at least some kind of pattern, even if it is messy hair. Now the tricky part of the dress is making it look like her legs are under there. Shading will help with this effect immensely, but what if you're working on a comic book without a lot of shading? You need to know how to convey depth and three-dimensionality with lines, not shading. So basically I've lightly lined her legs underneath the dress, and where the legs bend there's a big wrinkle. And at the edges of the legs are a lot of tilted curves where the dress falls down over the legs and rests on the floor. Try to imagine this whole drawing as 3D and work with it like that. So now I'm choosing a color scheme. Scribble in the colors you want your character to have, then make a color reference sheet to refer to later. This makes consistent colors easier for you to do. Finally, time for the line work. This is usually the most hated part of speed painting. Find a method that works for you so that it's not so tedious. I found that I love to draw with thick lines, and now that I do, line work is actually enjoyable. So if you aren't drawing in a large canvas, you might want to adjust the resolution now so that the lines aren't pixelated. Then, with long, smooth strokes, ink in the painting. If you have a stabilization or smoothing setting, crank it up all the way to make the lines even smoother. Hands are really hard to draw sometimes, so I made this sheet of different hand poses, and now whenever I need a pose that I can't draw right from memory, I refer to that sheet. Try this for yourself, but don't trace the hands. When you're making the sheet of hand references, don't trace a picture to get that. You have to draw it yourself. Hands are something you need to learn the structure of rather than trace to get a feel for the shape. Now, the dress wrinkles are a little hard to explain. I do it by instinct and guessing now. So, all of the fabric comes from the waist. It's a circle skirt, so it can flare out quite a bit, but it's still not completely circular. As you can see, the way it looks on the ground is not a perfect circle. It folds over itself in waves. If you have a dress in the house, pick it up and look at it. See how the wrinkles interact. How do the folds fall? What's it look like when you spin it, when you drape it over something, when it's dropped on the ground? Get a feel for how it works. If you don't want to do that, then just look at reference images or even just wing it. Some dresses are so fluttery they don't have much of a recognizable shape, and you can use a lot of, artistic license with it. It can be just a big fluttery mess, sort of. I'm lazy, so I got a lace brush and draw in some instant lace. Okay, here I learned how to draw roses from Christopher Hart books. Those are amazing. So basically you start with the center. Each new petal is bigger than the last, and the shape is roughly triangular. They're arranged in a circular pattern. Again, the best way to understand how to draw is to understand how items work in real life. If you have roses or thick flowers in your yard, pick one and take a look at it. Take it apart if you want to see how the petals are all folded together. Get a feel for the way it works. After selecting all of my lines and making color holds, it's time for my favorite part of drawing, shading it all in. Shading depends on the artist, but there are a few rules to follow. First, you need to know what the low points of the drawing are. These will be in heavy shadow. Hair is very layered, lots of strands of hair lying on top of each other, so it has a lot of low points. Each strand of hair is also 3D and folds down at the bottom into shadow. character or interest or something, I've put in some randomly colored overlays into the hair. Try this out for yourself. Drawing brown hair, airbrush in some red or blue, or both. It adds a touch of daring detail that is usually only seen in professional art.
trick for doing skin that looks light and dramatic, airbrush skin tone on the hair that is near the face. It looks like the hair is more transparent there, and even that the skin is glowing a little in the light. Okay, time for random cloth shading. I've got sort of a system, but not much of one. So, at the edges of each big curve, I draw shadows. This is because that's where the dress is pushed up a little. The edges are where another fold hangs over it. So these shadows should also be really curved, since the dress is a soft, billowy shape.
And I used overlay again to make the edges of the skirt higher saturation and the center of the skirt purplish. Depending on the cloth, the shading and highlighting will look a little different. This dress is satin, so it is highly reflective. If it was velvet, I would have used a more gradiented approach and muted highlights. finish the drawing up, I used random effects and sparkle brushes to make a surreal background. I thought about doing a light shining on her from a window, but decided against it. Instead, with some add glow blend modes, I made a diffused light shining on her from above, which just felt right. Follow your instinct when drawing. Okay, that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for requesting this. Thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe and check out some of the other videos on my channel. I'll see you there.